If you know anything about education in Malaysia, you probably know that lots of parents out there just want to send their kids to international schools. They don't want to send their kids to national schools. So first, some context. Historically speaking, international schools in Malaysia were designed basically for expatriates, diplomats, entrepreneurs, international schools. So like you can go to another school, maybe in, let's say, Zambia, Lesotho, France, or maybe in Germany, and you should be able to get access to the same curriculum right there. Popular names like IB and a whole bunch of other things come up. But you see, the thing is that as time has gone by, so there's been a lot more demand from Malaysians for international education, and there's a whole bunch of reasons. Once upon a time, international schools in Malaysia were subject to a quota system that actually limited the number of local students that you could enroll. So yeah, no guarantee that you could actually attend one if you wanted to last time. The policy was really in place to make sure that essentially international schools would remain international schools. So the quota was about 40% local students. But if you walk around almost any international school in Malaysia nowadays, you're gonna find they look a lot more local than you might otherwise think. In 2012, there was a policy shift. The Malaysian government relaxed the quota. A lot of international schools started sprouting out all over the entirety of Malaysia. So there were lots of international schools that started growing, not just on huge campuses, but also on shop lots. There are not just super expensive international schools nowadays, but also lots of private and more affordable international schools, although it's still a lot more expensive compared to national schooling. If you go to a national school in Malaysia, you can expect to spend maybe about like 1,000 to 4,000 ringgit in the course of 1 year. Well, if you attend an international school, so let's see right here, Garden International School tuition, yeah, you're going to be spending like hundreds of thousands of ringgit. In this increasingly internationalized and globalized world, so people have been looking for more options. They want to perhaps send their kids to have these kinds of experiences so that they can get exposure. Another reason why some people prefer international schools is that there's a lot of parents exposed to different types of curricula through Facebook and the whole anti-WhatsApp group type thing. So people have started learning a lot more about different educational options, whether IGCSE, A-levels, IB, and a whole lot of different things like the American curriculum and so on and so forth right there. And these are often seen as providing a more holistic education and better prepare students for higher education opportunities, partly because they focus a little less on exams in certain cases, and they often have better advising systems for helping students to go overseas. But at the same time though, there's a little bit of a dark side to this. There's also this perception that the national curriculum is less rigorous or comprehensive. I think that maybe that's not super true for something like, say, the sciences or mathematics. But for international schools, the standard of English is a lot higher. So like a C, for example, for first language English is going to place you at a CFR B2, which is basically the same level that you would get if you were to get an A+ for the Malaysian English SVN. A lot of people in Malaysia feel that the national education system has been experiencing a downfall. At some point, essentially, the Malaysian government decided, hey, we're not going to teach classes in English primarily, we're going to change everything into Malay. And there were times when it tried to essentially escape from this, and it even implemented the PPSMI to try to make sure that Malaysian students would be able to learn science and math in English, but that ended up getting changed after various different things happened. So for better or for worse, a lot of people out there, they do have their concerns really about national schools. In science class, where my teacher who was supposed to be teaching us in English suddenly showed up and started teaching us in Malay, it was horrible. Some people, they perceive also that there's politicization of education, and that's, I think, especially true with the history curriculum, which in Malaysia has been, some say, skewed essentially towards presenting a certain perspective and not really focused on conveying the history of the world, events out there outside of Islamic civilization. There are also things like, for example, moral studies, which lots of kids out there in Malaysia have experienced. Shout out if you've experienced the suffering that is moral studies. And People just have to memorize like moral values day in and day out. I think it's a horrible, performative, and otherwise useless subject. Some parents also, they do feel that the curriculum might be too exam focused and not sufficiently well-rounded because they realize that academics is not really the entire determinant of a person's education quality. And one of the reasons why parents are moving away from the national education system is because they feel somehow that international schools are going to provide a better quality and just higher standard education. International schools, they provide smaller class sizes and better facilities. Now, this is possible because why? Money! That money, it does provide different opportunities for you to build different things, to create different things, to hire maybe a teacher that is famous from overseas to potentially come into your school and then offer their services. International schools, they often have lots of funding compared to national schools, which of course are funded by Malaysian national taxpayers. If you're running on a government budget with minimal funding, then you don't really have a lot of options. Another reason why parents may want to send their kids to international schools is cultural diversity and networking opportunities. International schools, they do attract parents from all over the world and often parents of higher income as well. So the networking opportunity can be pretty significant, and children of high-ranking parents may rub shoulders with children of other high-ranking parents, and that might lead just to friendships and opportunities down the line that otherwise might not have been there. Now, I'm not saying that international school education is the very best for your child. By no means am I saying that. I went to a national school and I went to a top university in the US at the end of the day. But I would say that at the end of the day, if you feel that it's important for your children to experience the best possible education and you think that international schools are essentially essential towards that, well, you're not wrong. Like, that's your belief, and I think that you should go ahead and act upon it. But concerns about facilities aside, I don't think that people are completely against government schools. Sometimes the choice is about a matter of ideology. That's something to think about right here, that national policy might cause people to make intelligent choices in order to move away from the education system and to choose something that sidelines the Malaysian government's attempts to reform its education system because they feel that, well, what's provided in the market is actually better than what the country can provide. It's very different from Singapore, where the public education system is often considered to be better, more desirable, and just a lot more awesome compared to the international schooling system here in Malaysia. So it's not to say, of course, that national schools are bad all the way. By no means do I want to say that, because they do offer a certain advantage. They do allow you to become more connected to the local experience in the sense of being able to access really what it's like to live as an average Malaysian. International schools are inaccessible to a large segment of the population. So for some, enrolling children in international schools, it's a status symbol. It's the idea that if you can afford such an education, that's a sign of your social standing. But some parents don't actually care though, and they will do anything and everything in their power to get their kids into international schools, even if it means taking loans. This ends up feeding into a somewhat toxic culture. It highlights the growing concerns amongst certain demographics in Malaysia about the national education system. And it just makes people think sometimes, not always in a rational way, that perhaps by providing this rarefied, expensive education, they are going to provide what's perceived as the best possible education for their children. Anyway, so thank you for watching. I hope that you found this interesting or otherwise helpful right there. So, do you want to send your kid to a national school or an international school? Leave a comment down below and I will see you in the next video.